Hey everyone, this is Nick, and I shouldn't be working today as it's a national holiday in France when we celebrate putting the heads of the rich on spikes and overusing the guillotine. But I'm not about to leave you hanging, so here is the Linux and open source news. This week we have Microsoft pushing out new requirements for certain PCs that prevent them from booting Linux by default, unless you take a trip to the UEFI settings. We have the first Linux Mint 21 beta being available for download, and we have tons of new hardware from System76 and Slimbook. And of course, we also have today's sponsor, who's gonna let you get $100 free credit for your own Linux or gaming server. Thanks to Linode for sponsoring this video. Linode is my favorite solution to run a Linux or gaming server. It's what I use to run my own Nextcloud instance and my own OnlyOffice server. The interface is super easy to use. They are affordable, they have tons of documentation online, and they have one-click deployable servers for a ton of applications or games. Like Grav, for example. Grav is an open-source content management system, or CMS. You can use it through a graphical admin panel or through the command line. Page templates can be written in Markdown, and it uses the Twig engine. And you can deploy it in one click on Linode and start building a website. And to get you started, Linode is giving you $100 of free credit to get your own Linux server or gaming server running. To get access to that, just click the link in the description below. Linux Mint 21 Vanessa has seen its first beta release that was announced last week. It comes with the Cinnamon desktop, but there is also an XFCE variant, and another one that uses Mate. Mint 21 Debian Edition doesn't seem available as a beta just now, but I would be surprised if it didn't follow suit soon. This release doesn't seem to have anything groundbreaking, mostly tweaking and refining the experience by removing the out-of-memory daemon that plagues Ubuntu 22.04, fixing dual boot detection, adding WebP support in the image viewer and thumbnailer, replacing the previous Bluetooth configuration GUI by Blueman, which is a more complex but more complete solution, and fixing a few user experience issues in TimeShift. The window manager, Muffin, is also now closer to Mutter, the GNOME window manager, and the JavaScript interpreter has been updated, so performance should be improved. Fractional scaling should also work better, and right-clicking an app in the menu will display the jump lists you usually get by right-clicking an icon in the taskbar. Users of the previous Mint releases should get a new system updater tool that lets them move to Mint 21 when it's officially available. Brave users can already download the beta and play around with it. No, not Brave as in the Brave browser, Brave as in courageous. I should have said intrepid users. Wait, no, that sounds like they're using Ubuntu from 2008. Well, now you get it. There was a new development in the Microsoft wants to ban open source apps from their story last week. Microsoft had announced a new policy that was very badly worded and led people think that the sale of all open source apps would be prohibited on the Windows Store. This might seem like a non-issue, but a lot of FOSS apps are actually paid for in the store, including Krita, which derives a lot of its revenue from these sales. Microsoft was trying to fight the FOSS copycats that charged insane amounts of monies for copies of GIMP or LibreOffice. But as always, they did it in a half-assed way, and so they retracted the policy while they're clarifying it, stating that they absolutely do want open source apps in the store. Of course, they said that on Twitter, which is far from an official channel to discuss these things, and they haven't said what they would change, but it looks more like a misunderstanding than hostile action. I published a YouTube short about this specific topic a few days ago on the dedicated Linux Shorts channel. If you want more Linux and open source news, but you don't want to wait for the full-length videos, head over to the description and subscribe to the Linux Shorts channel. I promise it's no TikTok cringy bullshit, it's just Linux news in a short format. System76 has a new version of their Lemur Pro to announce, with 12th gen Intel i5 and i7 CPUs, and they promise up to 14 hours of battery life. The Lemur is a 14-inch laptop that weighs just over 1 kilo or 2.54 pounds for our American friends, and it can go up to 40 gigabytes of RAM and 4 terabytes of NVMe storage. As with all System76 devices, it runs Core Boot and an open source embedded controller firmware. The display is full HD with a matte finish, and it doesn't have a dedicated GPU, relying instead on Intel's Xe graphics. The I/O seems good with 2 Type-A USB 3.2, 1 Type-C that also does Thunderbolt 4, and a micro SD card reader. It supports Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5, and of course it has a headphone jack. The new Lemur starts at $1149 and runs Pop! OS 22.04 by default. It seems like a nice device, although I'm not a big fan of how it looks. It has that generic ultrabook look from the early 2010s, which I'm not a big fan of. Slimbook also keeps announcing new laptops, and this time it's the Executive that's getting an upgrade. This laptop is designed as a high-end ultrabook in two form factors, the 14-inch and the 16-inch. They both use Intel's 12th gen CPUs with 16x10 3K panels at 90Hz refresh rates. They have Thunderbolt 4, two USB-A, a USB-C, an HDMI port, as well as an SD card reader and an audio jack, which means they can drive up to 3 external displays in total, which is nice. Battery life should be pretty good, with large battery capacities of 99 or 82 watt-hours on the 14-inch and 16-inch respectively. And the design looks really good. A step up from the previous Executive that I had reviewed on the channel. The 14-inch model is limited to Xe graphics, but the 16-inch comes with an Nvidia RTX 3050 Ti as well, and they both have 1080p webcams. The 14-inch version starts at €1299 and the 16-inch at €1600, with 500GB of SSD and 16GB of RAM by default. I'll get the 16-inch version as a review unit next month, so expect a review on the channel and subscribe if you want to see it. Or subscribe for the Linux news, or for all the content I put out. Seriously, Mark, I see you, you're not subscribed. Click that button, seriously. Looks like Lenovo is now shipping laptops that can only boot Windows by default. The new ThinkPad Z13 implements a new security coprocessor developed by Microsoft called Pluton. This thing means that all bootloaders or drivers that are signed with anything other than an official Microsoft UEFI key will not boot by default, and that of course includes Linux. You also can't boot from any third-party external peripherals that are plugged in via Thunderbolt. You can fortunately disable that behavior in the UEFI settings, but it's still a pretty hostile move that blocks a lot of users from even trying Linux on their new devices. It's another roadblock that you have to research and disable, and it makes Linux look like a hack or something that is not secure. It looks like this change is a Microsoft requirement for secure core PCs, mainly meant for enterprise devices. But it's still a problem, as there is no telling if Microsoft could extend this requirement to every other device. It also seems that there is no security benefit to this, so it's all the more baffling, seeing as Lenovo started selling laptops that run Linux out of the box relatively recently. And yet another hostile move spearheaded by Microsoft. One step forwards and 2 or 20 steps backwards. The Ubuntu team keeps working on the Firefox Snap to try and make it perform better, and they have 2 major improvements to report. The first one is on the side of language packs and extensions. Instead of copying them all on first start, Firefox will now only load one locale at a time, based on the system settings, which means that the first run after install should take about 6 seconds less on modern systems with relatively fast storage. The second improvement is on GNOME and GTK theme compression. Firefox uses 2 snaps, the GNOME 3.38 and the GTK-common-theme snaps, which are not compressed as well as the Firefox Snap is. The decompression process for Firefox is fast, but for these 2 libraries it wasn't, so they switched the 2 culprits to the new LZO compression algorithms, and Firefox should be speedier, just as every other Snap app that depends on these 2 snaps, including Chromium and Thunderbird. Good news all around for Ubuntu users. Even if you're not using Firefox, maybe you're using Chromium or Thunderbird, and these will also benefit from these improvements, so your whole desktop will feel snappier. Pun intended. Now let's talk GNOME and what the developers have been working on. This week they added a new libadwaita about window, so all apps using that core library can now have similar looking about pages. There is a new terminal app called Blackbox. It has customizable tabs, a header bar that you can toggle on or off, floating window controls, it supports full screen, and it is compatible with Tilix window theming. Plus, it displays its tab in the header bar if it's enabled. It's using libadwaita and GTK4, so it should be relatively snappy. Workbench, the sandbox to learn and prototype with GNOME technologies, now has a platform tools library. It uses the new standard light and dark theme switcher, and it replaced the confirmation dialog with toast notifications that just let you undo your changes. It also added APIs to let you use templates from code. Finally, GNOME To Do, the task list app, has been renamed Endeavor and has a new feature letting you drag tasks between lists. It's a small week in terms of updates, but it's still nice to see the developers working on the core GNOME platform, which is, I think, what makes GNOME very appealing for app developers these days. On the KDE side of the Linux desktop ecosystem, we also have a bunch of updates. This week, the developers have implemented the annotation UI from the screenshot tool inside of GwenView, the image viewer, so you can open an image and annotate it directly from there, which is pretty cool. The settings pages for formats and language have been merged to make selecting a language and its associated formats and units clearer for users, and it also fixes bugs for both pages. K-Wallet, the password manager, now handles the free desktop secrets standard, which means it should support a lot more third-party apps, like the Minecraft launcher, for example. 4 15-minute bugs were also resolved, and there were a bunch of user interface improvements, like console notifications taking you to the correct session, dragging files to notifications, which will now raise the relevant window to the foreground. The Get New Stuff dialogues do not have redundant close buttons anymore, and message dialogues that ask you to confirm by yes or no were changed to be more descriptive. Most of these changes will land in Plasma 5.26 or the new KDE Gear compilation or the new KDE Frameworks update, so you'll have to wait a little bit to benefit from them. If you have used Cutefish in the past, or if you actively use it now, you might be distressed by this news. It looks like the desktop environment might be dead. If you don't know about Cutefish, it's a relatively recent desktop environment that mimics macOS, and it has a lot of attention to detail, and it uses the Qt framework, not GNOME. While they had a pretty good initial first version, it looks like neither the distro or the desktop have seen any development on GitHub for the past 2 months, and emails that people sent to the team seem to go unanswered. The last release is from the end of January 2022, and people assume the development stopped due to lack of funding. Now, of course, it might just be a small pause, and they might have code that they didn't merge on their GitHub repo yet. But 5 months is a long time to go without a new release, especially if you're still in beta. Proposals are already underway to clone the project and build a new team to work on it. Nothing is certain, but it kinda looks like the Cutefish project has suffered the same fate as JingOS, the OS that ran on the JingPad A1. The team has been disbanded because no more funding. Now, I do hope somebody picks up any or both of these projects, because they were really on track to become something really good. System76 is announcing their Launch Keyboard Lite, a smaller version of their mechanical launch keyboard. It's more portable, smaller, and of course lighter, but it retains most of the features that make the launch keyboard special. It has a choice of Kale, Box, Jade, or Royal switches, as well as Silent Brown and Pink switches now. It has a USB-C port for plugging it in and transferring the configurations, and a full-on config system to tweak the layout and save it on the board itself, so you can reuse it everywhere you go. It looks like the Lite drops the USB hub features its bigger sibling has though. At the time I'm recording this video, the pricing hasn't been announced, but it should be lower than the $285 needed to buy a full-size launch keyboard, and it should be available today. Of course, the firmware is open source, and it comes with multiple cables to ensure you can plug it into anything. I might be able to get my hands on a full-size launch keyboard soon, so maybe I'll be able to review it on the channel, or at least make a short video on it and see how it works. And in the meantime, I'm expecting System76 to open a distribution center in Europe before the end of the year, so people can actually buy these devices here. And let's finish this video with some gaming news. The Steam Deck now has more than 3,800 games certified, this time including Machinarium, Papers, Please, Axiom Verge 2, Doom 64, Crusader Kings 2, Red Faction, Life is Strange, Paladins, or Siberia 3. And on top of that, SteamOS 3.3 Beta is now available with a lot of new things. First, it will let users scale the deck interface on external displays, which should also make using SteamOS 3 on your own home console a lot better in the future. There's a scheduled night mode feature, a new Japanese Kana keyboard option, and a new SteamOS channel update selector that lets you pick between stable updates, betas, and previews, the latter being the same as betas but also including system-level features, while the beta channel limits itself to Steam's new features. Finally, the Flatpak version of Chrome will now close properly when quitting it through Steam. That's a bunch of really good updates that shouldn't take really long to reach your very own Steam Deck if you already have one. Valve has been pushing these updates with an incredible speed, and they already made the Steam Deck a much better device than when it first launched. Just like my sponsor segues are getting much better. Exactly like this one for today's sponsor, Tuxedo. Tuxedo is a company based in Germany, and they sell desktops and laptops that run Linux out of the box. You can choose from a selection of very popular distributions, or you can just install whatever you want, because you know that the hardware supports Linux. And if there are some small tweaks needed, Tuxedo has PPAs and repos that let you install every package you need to make sure that everything runs perfectly smoothly. They have a very wide range of devices, from the smallest ultrabooks and the cheapest ones to the biggest gaming towers and the biggest gaming laptops. I personally bought the Stellaris 15 from them, which is their high-end production station gaming laptop, and it's been a dream. I only edit my videos on this thing now. I don't even use my desktop for that anymore. But of course, they also have models for all price points and for all needs, with or without integrated GPUs and with plenty of customization options for CPUs, GPUs, RAM, SSD, and even getting your own logo engraved on the lid if you want. So, if you need a new PC and you want to make sure that it runs Linux well, head over to the link in the description below, click it, and get yourself a Tuxedo device. They're really cool. Now, thanks everyone for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't hesitate to like, to subscribe, to turn on notifications, to write a comment, to basically do whatever you want to make sure that this video is more popular. And if you didn't like it, you can also, well, dislike it and tell me why in the comments. And if you want to support the channel, there are multiple ways. You can either click on the Super Thanks button below the video, you can click on the PayPal link in the description, or you can join my Patreon members or my YouTube members. Both of them get access to a weekly podcast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So thanks everyone for watching, and I guess you'll see me in the next one. Bye!